everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now, in the last video, we stopped at this point where we tested our application locally. All right, we tested it locally, all right, and then we were able to see, this is the HTML code, this is the server.js, all right, you don't need to worry about all of these. This is just an application that we're using to test, all right, what we're trying to do. Okay, so you don't have to bother your head about, all of this. Our major focus is on being able to test our application, build an image from it, and then, all right, build a CI/CD pipeline on GitLab, all right, CI/CD. Okay, now, so this is what we got, all right. So we saw the local host 30,000, and then we were able to get to this page as well. Now we want to look at something. Now in the last video, right, we saw that all our jobs, all right, actually run using, basically together. All right, so one didn't wait for the other, they ran at the same time. Now we want to try to avoid that because there are certain jobs that are dependent on another job, okay, because the output of the other job is basically the input for, all right, this other job, right? So if the two of them run together at the same time, then there's going to be a problem. That means our pipeline is not going to work, it's going to break. Okay, so what we can do to actually solve this issue is to actually introduce what you call stages, all right, in GitLab CICD. So we're going to go into our pipeline script and we need to update, all right, our script. So here we need to define, all right, our stages. So here I'm going to come here and say stages, all right, and then of course it's going to be a list because we're dealing with YAML, so we're going to have to use it as a list. So I'm going to say test stage, all right, and then I have the build, all right, stage. So let's say these are the two stages that we have at this point. Okay, so now how do I, all right, impute that, all right, here basically? So what do I do? So here I will come here and then I'll say, all right, so I'm just going to say stage. Okay, and then I'll specify the stage. So I can put it here as a list or something, or I can also put that in front and say here, all right, this belongs to the test stage. Then I'll come to my build image as well, and then I'll say stage, all right, and then I'll say this belongs to the build, all right, stage. Then my push image, all right, I can put the push image and the build image, all right, in the same stage as well. So I'll say stage, and then this will be build, all right, stage also. All right. So now with stages, my job, all right, will no longer run at the same time. All the jobs will not run at the same time, right? It will wait for the stage. The first stage would run, and then the second stage, all right, would run like that. So it's not going to run in parallel, all right? It's going to basically run one after the other. Okay. So now let's push, all right, code here into the repo, all right, and let's see what will happen. So I'm going to say git add. All right, so git commit -m, all right, and then what we've just done is basically stages, all right, added. So let's just say stages added, and then I'll say git push, all right? All right, now let's push that. So the moment I push, okay, so let's see what is going on there. Okay, so it's showing us this error. You are not allowed to push your code to this project. Okay, so what could be the issue with that? All right, so let's solve this error that we see here. So I'm going to open up my sticky note. I think I have something there that can be useful for us. Okay, so I'm going to come here. I'm going to copy this line. Okay, copy this. So I need to run what you call an SSH agent. Okay, so sorry, let's copy that better. All right, so copy that. Now this is going to start up an SSH agent on my system, and then I need to add my SSH key, all right, to my repository. Okay, so I don't know why this is happening, but then it's fine. So my SSH key basically is, I don't know the full name because I have a few keys there. So I'm going to use this one here. All right, so I'm going to copy that. That's the one we created together, remember? Okay, so I'm going to put that here. All right, and then let's try to push again. So git push. Okay, so let's see. All right, so it's going now. So it's basically just the key thing, all right, that is causing that. And here you can see that it says the pipeline passed, which means, the extension that we installed also was able to, read our script. And then it's saying to us here that the pipeline passed, which means our pipeline script does not have any kind of issue. Now, if I click on the pipeline here, so if I go to build and I click on pipelines, then I should be able to see my pipeline. So now you can see my pipeline running here, and then here you can see the stages. So now I have two stages, all right? One is running before the other. So if I click on that pipeline job, now you can see that I have the test stage and then I have what? The build stage. Okay. Now the test stage has completed and then the build phase is now going on. Now, but another thing here is also a problem because I mean, if you look at this build phase, right, the two of them are running at the same time, which is not supposed to be. Right? I mean, if you're building an image, you have to build your image first, and then after the image has been built, that is when you can now push the image, all right, to GitHub, right? That's what you can push. I mean, so the build image should run and then the push image, all right, should follow after that. That should be the order of things. Because I mean, if you look at it now, the push image actually executed before the build image. That is not the way things should go. So how do we solve this problem? Because I mean, what we want to try to do now is basically to tell GitLab that this build image, all right, is needed by the push image. So which means the push image is dependent on the build image. Okay, so that's exactly what we want to do. So I'm going to go back here. All right. So what is that syntax? All right, that we need to configure. All right, in order to achieve this. Okay. Now, another keyword we can use here, basically we've defined our stages already, right? So what we can do here again is to use the keyword needs. All right. So the keyword needs is what we're going to use here. Now here we're going to say the push image needs what? Needs the build, all right, underscore image. Okay. So that's what we're going to say. So basically what needs does is that it's basically telling our pipeline that, hey, the fact that you guys are in the same stage does not mean you will run in parallel. Okay. So what needs basically would do is to say, you know what? The build image, all right, is going to run. And then you are going to run after this build image succeeds, which means if this stage does not pass or if this job does not execute successfully, then this stage will be what? Will be aborted. Right? This job basically will not be, all right, triggered. That's what it means. So the needs dependency or the needs keyword here is basically saying that the push image is dependent, all right, on the build image. Okay. So let's push this again to the repo and let's see what happens. All right. All right. So do your git add, all right, and then do your git commit -m, all right, and then we will do, all right, needs dependency, all right, added. Okay. And then let's do our git push. Okay. All right. So the pipeline has been pushed again. So now if I click here on the pipeline again, right, I should see that I have my pipeline triggered already and my pipeline is running. So I will click on this pipeline ID right here, all right, to see what is going on. Now, look at what happens here. So you can see that we have the test, we have the build, but you can see that the two of them are still more like in the same, of course, they're in the same stage, but one is going to run, all right, and then it will depend on the other. Now, you can also click on job dependency here to see what job is dependent on what. So if I click on this or if I click on this, I can highlight here to say show dependency. So I'll click on that. And then here, if I click on the push, if I hover on the push image, I can see this blue line basically telling me that the push image is dependent, all right, on the build image. Okay. So now if you look at what you have here, the build image is executed, all right, and the push image is actually waiting for the build, all right, image to execute. Okay. So that is basically what we have just configured. So the push image needs the build image, all right, in order to run. So look at that. So the build image is completed, and then the push image is now, all right, doing its own thing as well. Okay, so now there's no conflict, all right. So this stage will run, and then this other stage will also run. But now we can also configure that one job is dependent upon another, so that there will be no issue in our pipeline. Is that okay? And of course, you can also simulate something as well. You can also simulate a failure to see if the build image fails, will the push image run? All right. So we can simulate that as well. So you can see that all the job has passed. Okay. So basically, we're just trying to understand the syntax, the commands, all right, the keywords that we can use before we get into building our job, all right, or our application, all right, as well. So here, I'm going to click here on pipeline editor, right? So your pipeline can be edited directly even from this page, actually, right? You don't have to go through your Visual Studio Code every time to do git add, git commit, and git push, all of that. Of course, you can build directly even from here. So under the build, just click on pipeline editor, and then it will show you, all right, your GitLab CICD that you have right here. Okay, and then you have some things here like visualize. So under the visualize, you can see all your jobs, and then you can see the one that depends upon another. So if I click on push, if I hover around the push image, I can see that the push image is dependent on the build image, and then I can see all the stages here that I've defined in my GitLab CI.YAML. So the build stage and the test, all right, stage. Okay, you have the validate, where basically you can validate your pipeline and things like that, and then here you can see, all right, your full configuration. Is that okay? All right, so let's go back to the edit and let's try to simulate an error. So here, for example, now under here, let me just put something here. So I can come here and just remove the echo, and I can say wrong, all right, command, basically, okay? Let's say wrong command. All right, so of course it's going to give us an error, right? So let's see what happens, all right, at this point. Okay, so here I can click on view pipeline. All right, so I'm viewing my pipeline right here. So of course I can show my dependencies, and I can see that, my push image is dependent on these, but let's see what happens to this job, right? So we want to see what happens basically. So the build image is still not started. The run test is running at the moment. So once that is done, it will pass the button to the build image. So let's just wait and see, all right, what happens here. All right, now the build image has started, but of course we've introduced something that is not correct. So the pipeline should actually fail and not execute. But let's wait and let's see what will happen. All right. Although it's showing as if the pipeline is running, but then it should fail because we inserted a wrong command. All right. So there you go. Now the pipeline has failed, and you can see that automatically the push image was aborted. All right, because what we said here is that the push image is dependent on the build image. So if the build image is not run successfully, then the push image will also fail. All right, so you can see that once this failed, all right, this will not, all right, execute. Basically, okay. So that is the purpose of that, simulation that we did right there. Now I can go back to the pipeline editor, and then we can configure some more, all right, configurations. Now you can see that the pipeline failed because we inserted the wrong command. Okay, and so basically it's not going to work. And then of course the next stage actually failed because of that wrong command that we entered. All right. So we can remove that wrong command, and so that we don't forget next time. So let's remove that. It's just for us to test and see what happens if the pipeline fails. Okay. Now, another thing that I want us to do here is let's add one more stage. So let's call the stage, all right, let's call it deploy stage. Okay, so deploy, let's assume we're deploying to a server. All right, so here I'm going to just, edit directly from here. And then I'm going to call this deploy. All right, so let's call this deploy image. All right, so deploy image. Okay, so here, of course, we have a stage. So the stage is deploy. All right, that's the name of the stage. And then let's just put a little script here. Okay, so all these things that we're doing is basically to help us understand the syntax and the structure of the GitLab CI, all right, CD. Okay, before we get into the actual meat of the matter. Okay, so here I'm going to say deploying, all right, new Docker image to dev server. All right, and so now if I execute this, all right, so it's telling us pipeline syntax is correct, checking the pipeline status. All right, so it should show us something here to view the pipeline. So let's wait for that. All right, so view pipeline. Now you can see that my pipeline now has what, 3 stages. Okay, so I have the test stage, I have the build stage, and then I have the deploy stage. Okay, so this will run, these 2 stages will run, all right, sequentially, one after the other, and then this will run. So let's see what happens now. Of course, we've removed the run command. So let's see what happens now that we have corrected the pipeline. All right, let's see if it goes through, all right, as expected. Okay, so let's wait for that and let's see how that happens. Now, while we're waiting for this, I'm sure you're wondering, all right, that, where is this job running, all right, on what server is this job running? And I mean, if you were to be Jenkins, for example, we'll have maybe deployed a server, whether the server is running as a Docker container or whether we are just using a normal EC2 instance, right? But as far as we are concerned, all right, with GitLab CI, we've not actually configured any server, all right, anywhere. Everything that we're doing now, we're doing it basically on the GitLab platform. Okay, so I'm going to show you how the GitLab platform works. Okay, once this image is built, once the stages and these jobs have been completed, we have an idea of basically, what happens behind the scene. Now, I told us from the beginning that GitLab CICD hopes to be, that platform that when you want to do anything that has to do with DevOps or DevSecOps, right, they want everything to revolve around their own platform, right? Which means you may not necessarily need, okay, to host something somewhere else. You can actually do everything you want to do within the GitLab, all right, interface, okay? So all of these jobs that you see here that is running, it is actually running on what you call a GitLab instance, all right, using what you call an executor, all right, or basically, what you call a runner. Now, there are three things in GitLab CICD that we must know, all right. There's what you call the GitLab instance, and there's what you call the GitLab runner, and there's what you call the GitLab executor. All right. So the GitLab instance, the GitLab runner, and what you call the GitLab executor. Okay. Now, the GitLab.com website that we're using is referred to as the GitLab instance. Okay, which means that is where our repository is running. We're running our pipeline within that GitLab instance. All right. Now, the GitLab runner, all right, it is basically what is responsible for executing our jobs, right? So that's the place, that's the system, all right, that actually manages, right, our jobs. Okay. Now the GitLab executor, right, it is actually, okay, that little software, all right, that executes, all right, our job. So which means inside of the executor, that's where your job actually is executed. So there's the instance, there's the runner, and there's the executor. So on your runner, you have what you call an executor. That executor is actually what is responsible, all right, for running, all right, or executing your job basically. So if I click on any of these jobs, all right, now if I click on any of these jobs and I scroll up, now here it says running with GitLab Runner. All right, this is the version of the GitLab Runner that we're using, which basically is provided to us by GitLab themselves. All right, we didn't install any of this. Okay, they provided it to us. And then here it says preparing the Docker machine executor. Now, if you look at it here, it is actually using what you call a Docker image, which means all of that job that we ran actually ran inside, all right, a Docker container. Right? It was executed as what? As a Docker container. So which means as soon as your job is done, the container is discarded immediately. Okay, nothing is kept, all right, on the runner. Is that okay? So I need you to understand that. Okay, so you can see that here it is running using what? A Ruby image. Now, of course, you can overwrite that image if you need another image to run your job. That is, that is very possible. Okay, but what I just intend to show us is that there is the runner. No, there's the instance, there's the runner, and then there is what? The executor. Okay, the executor is the Docker image which your job runs inside of as a container. The runner is basically more like a server that has a software installed that manages, all the job flows and all of that. And then the instance is your repo. Your repo is more like the GitLab instance itself. All right, that way you have your repositories and other stuff like that. Okay, so in the next video we're going to delve more into all of this. All right, we're going to see, all right, basically how you can set up your own runner as well, right? Because you cannot in a work environment, you're not going to be using the shared runner provided to you by GitLab. You have to install your own runner where your jobs can run, all right, with your own defined or executor basically. All right, so we're going to look at that, all right, in the next video, all right, how to install our own runner on our own system, all right, and all of that. Okay, so thank you so much, and I'll see you, all right, in the next video.